What's going on, guys? It's John DeYonk here, and today I want to talk about how the property investment game has changed over the last decade. I've spent a solid amount of time over the last 12 months researching and learning as much as possible about property investing, and I want to go over the results I found. I think I've listened to over 600 podcast episodes, watched at least 100 YouTube videos, and read somewhere between 20 and 30 books, all of which were directly related to property investing. I've even been so committed and excited about the topic that I've started my own YouTube channel. So to ensure myself that I haven't gone absolutely insane, could you please like this video, subscribe, and share it with at least one person? What kicked this whole adventure off was a book that I read when I was probably 15 years old but had long forgotten about. And now it was Christmas 2018, I had a whole 2 weeks to relax, and there it was, sitting on my bookshelf, beckoning to be read again. I know I've talked about this book a million times, but it was Steve McKnight's 0 to 130 Properties in 3.5 years. With a title like that and some free time, how could you not possibly read it? So 8 hours later, it was completely done, and I was totally inspired to become a property investor. Rip out the equity from my principal place of residence and purchase my second property. Little did I consider that the book I had just read was written 15 years prior in 2003. And although the fundamentals remain the same, the market, government policies, and financial regulations have changed. Experts now refer to the methods demonstrated in that book as gaming the system, where the way you used to get around reaching your borrowing limit was once ABC Bank said no more, create a new trust structure and approach a different bank which would then provide another loan to invest with. This was possible as long as the loan was not in default, because the debt to ABC Bank is owned by the trustee company on behalf of the trust, and you had no personal liability or need to record the guarantee on your personal financial statements. So I set out to go and find an investment savvy accountant who could set up a trust structure for me to buy my next property under, which I did. But to my despair, after discussing this method with my broker, he explained that this strategy may have worked in the past, but he didn't believe it would work under the new positive credit reporting and open banking we're now dealing with. If you want to learn more about positive credit reporting and open banking, you can watch my previous video that I've done. I'll leave it here for you, and I'll put a link down in the description section below. But wait, if you're about to transition midway through this video, don't forget to smash that like button before you go. This totally broke my heart, and I thought I could, as they say, game the system and build a multi-million-dollar property portfolio overnight. Just like all the other success stories that you hear in the news, like 6 properties in 12 months, or property millionaire buys a $5 million house on the beach. However, after all this additional education, I've realized all you really need for early retirement or financial freedom is 2 to 5 properties, depending on how lavish you want your lifestyle to be. And even that's now shifted in my mindset. If I was financially free right now and I didn't have to work, I might travel for a while, but then when I get back home, I'll be twiddling my thumbs and I'd be bored in less than a week. And I'd probably just end up reading Steve McKnight's book again. So because there's no more gaming the system, it now all revolves around incomes. With all of our banking data now being shared between banks, we are fully exposed. And you might say, well, I can choose to share my data or not. But really, can you choose? You don't think it's going to be an absolute requirement when applying for a new home loan? If we can't afford to repay a mortgage on at least a 6% per annum principal and interest loan, why would they lend us the money? Lenders need the reassurance that you have the ability to pay back what you're borrowing. Otherwise, it's only going to cause them a headache and cost them money. This all feeds into our borrowing capacity, which right now you can roughly calculate at about 6 to 7 times your income. If you're a couple buying together, combine your incomes and then calculate it out. This number represents the maximum amount a lender will loan you, providing that your spending habits are all in order. This is where that 2 to 5 properties comes into play, because we're limited by how much we can borrow. Without dramatically increasing our income, there's only so many properties we can get a loan for. Now you might be thinking, well, there are other alternative strategies out there to continue buying property. The main one, of course, is buying lower valued properties with higher rental yields. In other words, buying a property that's paying for itself from the rental income. And this sounds too good to be true, right? Well, it can actually be done, yes, but these properties come with some unfavorable elements too. According to the ABS in May 2019, the average Australian income was $1,695 per week, or $88,150 per year. And for the September 2019 quarter, the mean price of residential dwellings in Australia was $660,800. If we times this income by 6 as discussed before, it comes to a maximum borrowing capacity of $528,000, which is $130,000 under the Australian mean property value. So let's continue on with this scenario. an average income earner has instead decided to go down the multiple investment properties path and has been sold the dream of using equity to buy a new one every year thereafter. They go ahead and buy 2 investment properties in a rural area at $250,000 each, with high rental yields. And they're making money while they sleep at night, as they say. The problem here is these properties are now $410,000 under the Australian mean. And if you didn't know it already, the value of property basically comes from the cost of construction plus a number plucked out of thin air, which is purely driven by supply and demand. Human emotion, economic activities, government policies and financial regulations all play their parts too, but essentially they just play with the supply and demand levers. So what drives property prices is a shrink in supply and an increase in demand. For context, picture 2 extremes. An auction where no one arrives apart from the 3 neighbours next door, or an auction where there's 8 registered bidders and 80 people at the auction. Which property do you think is going to sell more than the reserve? This is demand-driven pricing. So properties priced significantly lower than the mean could demonstrate that there's not a whole lot of demand for these properties to begin with, potentially stunting long-term capital growth. And please use the capital city or suburb mean. The whole Australian property market doesn't exist. I'm just using its mean here to prove a point. Now you might be saying, I don't care about the capital growth. I just care about that passive income. Well, at best, let's say that these properties are making you an additional $420 a month, or $5,000 a year, so $10,000 a year in total. Well, now you actually have to pay tax on that income, so you're down to $6,000 a year. Well done. And what happens if your tenants decide to move out and there's not a lot of demand for people to live in that area? How long could your property sit vacant for? 2 weeks, a month, 3 months? Who knows? But regardless, that's all going to be digging into this $6,000. The same goes for other market impacts outside of your control, such as interest rates and unemployment. If your interest repayments are going up, it's going to take away from that $6,000. Again, if your tenants are unemployed and can't afford to pay that rent, it's going to take away from that $6,000. Now this is just juggling between only 2 properties, but imagine if you had 10 or 20 of these things all being impacted at the same time. And hang on, wasn't your goal to pull out the equity from the capital growth and buy a new one next year anyway? It's much better to focus on a smaller number of A-grade investment properties that have strong capital growth potential. If you purchased a $660,000 property and it had grew by 6.8%, in the first year it would grow by $44,800. Minus capital gains tax and selling costs, you might only see $20,000 of it, but that's huge compared to $6,000 from the 2 lower grade properties. And the best part is, this is compound growth, so it increases more and more every single year. And this is the play, to sit and hold A-grade investment properties that have good compound growth over time. The more of these you can have, the more growth you'll accumulate. But because we're limited to our borrowing capacity, we can only really hold 2 to 5 of these things. So leave the passive income dream for real retirement. And even then, you'll have needed to pay down a significant amount of the mortgage to be able to live off that rental income. For now, focus on your income, increase that borrowing capacity, and find A-grade investment properties that will have demand in 20, 30, and even 60 years' time. Lastly, you can now even pay someone to do absolutely everything for you. So if you lack the time, knowledge, or drive to thoroughly research A-grade areas and properties, then outsource it. It might seem like a large additional cost now, but this is your biggest financial asset. And if we only get 1 to 5 shots at buying an A-grade property, we should do it right from the start. If you do want to learn more about what makes an A-grade investment property, I've done an entire series dedicated to just that. You can click the link up here, or I'll leave a link in the description section below. I want to know what else you guys have noticed about the property market changing over the years. Leave a comment down below. As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, taxation, and property investing advice for your current situation. These videos are just my opinion and are general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. If you're keen for more content, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification button so you don't miss a video. And until next time, happy house hunting.